Hello everybody, episode 10 of FPL Affairs here, the podcast that discusses our 9-month-long love affair with FPL, including the ins and outs that keep us awake at night. Over this international break, this is our third video, and for game week 12, wildcards is a massive topic. So Jack and I have put together our own, despite having already used our first one. So let's see what you think of it. Let's get cracking.
And there's Mo Salah. There goes Haaland. He's on his way again. He's hungry. He's scored. Ice cold precision from Palmer. Kayo Saka. That is a diamond of a goal.
Who did you put in your wild card?
We'll come up with our wild cards now. Our made-up drafts. So bye-bye to those budget defenders. How many of them are included?
Defenders. Is it yours first? Good.
So, yeah, I very much.
Yeah, three of them made it.
I very much ummed and ahed with some of these, and it did fluctuate based on how I wanted to spread the funds, because it weighed up, like Verbruggen's been spoken about a lot, and we were just talking about Brighton's upcoming fixtures. So for me, really, Fabianski was nailed because he's the only starting 4 million goalkeeper.
I agree.
And I was fluctuating goalkeeper wise when I was putting together. It was mainly between sticking with Raya because Arsenal's fixtures are turning round. He was one option. The second one was Sanchez because of Chelsea's fixtures coming up. And the
I
third
think he deserves a mention, Sanchez.
And the third one, because we spoke about him when we first mentioned about how many premium midfielders we did in episode 6, and Sanchez came up with a lot of save points and things for that. So it was mainly between those three as to who got the same goalkeeper spot. I was looking at combos, so it was very much, if I went with Sanchez, I'd have a Brighton defender.
Yeah.
If I went with Verbruggen, I'd get a Chelsea defender.
I think that's going to be a very common theme for wildcards in Wildcard 12.
Which, for me, I penciled in Colwill in this one. Hall I put in, which again we spoke about. Aït-Nouri we spoke about, with that, and both of them with their attacking returns. Gabriel I left in, and I think whether people have the likes of Gabriel and Konate in will depend on what your team value is. I think as to whether you can afford both or if you can afford higher. And looking at this back five, actually, I haven't got a 4.0 defender in there, and I think the view would be, how I'd play them would be Gabriel and Konate starting pretty much every game. And then it would be looking at rotating between Colwill, Hall and Aït-Nouri. So not necessarily having a fifth choice set and forget.
A dad, yeah.
There has been talk of Dunk at Brighton Trice dropping to 4.3. And if he did, then I'd have a rethink and actually have him in where I've got Colwill.
Yeah.
And have Sanchez in goal. So for those listening at the moment, this wildcard draft has got Verbruggen and Fabianski in goal. The back five of Gabriel, Konate, Colwill of Chelsea, Hall of Newcastle, and Aït-Nouri of Wolves. The midfield, there's 12. Palmer, Salah, and Saka were on there non-negotiable. That was when I was putting together this draft. For me, the starting point was a premium midfield, and that left the fourth and fifth point midfield. And the fourth spot before this weekend, that was Mbeumo. After this weekend, because of Fernandes' 17-pointer, I thought, well, I'll put in Bruno Fernandes and see what I can get. The fifth choice midfielder being Rodgers, because I got him at a cheap enough point. But the Rodgers and Fernandes picks could quite easily be Mbeumo and Smith Rowe, or Mbeumo and Semenyo, perhaps, but he was on 4 yellows, and Aitonori was on 4 yellows.
Yeah, bit of risk.
So that pictured the midfield: Saka, Palmer, Salah, premiums, then Bruno Fernandes as the sort of mid-premium, and then Rodgers as the budget. And then up front, Isak of Newcastle, as I've gone without Haaland for the finances.
Yeah.
And then I've put in Wissa and João Pedro. And there is, if I still had my wildcard draft and I made it, then this team would leave me with 0.1 in the bank.
You did it based on current team value, because I did it based on like 100 million.
Yeah, I toyed at both. I toyed at both just to see which would go, but my team value's 101 point something. What I found tricky when doing a wild card based on 100 million is that there'd be a number of players in there that a lot of that people would have had value tied up in. So if you started a wild card from 100 million now, some people got Salah at 12.5 million. He's now 12.9. Some people got Rodgers at 5 million. He's now 5.4. Other players that have gone up by, Gabriel's gone up. He's gone up, but he's gone back down a little bit. So I based it on existing point. Well, and obviously those people that have had Palmer for a while, he's gone up from 10.5 to 10.9.
Yeah.
Was 11. So I just thought, well, I'll base this wildcard squad on the assumption that whoever's making a wildcard would have had some of these players in already and have value tied up in them.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, sorry, by the way, I'm just trying to make sure my phone doesn't die halfway through. So I'm just trying to get it on charge. But I agree. I think it all very much depends on your current team value. But my team that I did it based on sort of like a worst case scenario for people. So maybe when we go on to it in a sec, it'd be interesting to see if you could improve it in certain ways that would obviously make it a bit more exciting, because I've gone quite budget everywhere.
This team, I think with only 0.1, my main initial concerns, I'm taking with a pinch of salt that Colwill, Palmer, Saka and Wissa are all yellow flagged, but I think my main real question marks with this wild card is the up front. Now I've seen various other wild cards people have posted where their forward line, all three forwards, range between the 5.5 and 6.7 mark, and no higher. And I'm very much one who I'm not comfortable with that. I think if I'm not having Haaland, I want to have one of the more premium next brackets in there. So that's looking at either Watkins, Isak, Jackson, Solanke. So I would sort of want to have one of those four spring to mind, and then the other two slots to be more towards the budget end, but that may just be me.
But you could easily do a Wissa to a Watkins and do a Fernandes down to somebody that rotates well with Rodgers.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Even like a Matoma or somebody else who has a good run of fixtures.
Well,
that rotates well with Rodgers, and then you could play your 3-4-3, because I actually think Watkins is a really good option going forward. He's not in my wildcard draft, but I do think he's going to go under the radar and be a really good sort of differential pick over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was looking at Luca Dean about that, how Villa have got 3 home fixtures in the next 4. So,
which he's in mine, I think.
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
So yeah, main pros and cons of this one are I focused on a strong midfield. You could say 3.5 midfield premiums if you count Fernandes as a half because he's somewhere in the middle for his price point.
I'd call him premium.
Well,
I'd call him premium.
for
But
his
yeah, I understand your point.
for his FPL history, you'd say premium. Current price point, not premium.
Yeah, 'cause he was 8.5 at the beginning of the season, but I reckon over the coming 3 or 4 weeks, he will easily be at sort of 8-7. I reckon.
Yeah.
Over the coming month.
Other pros of it, I put one premium defender, one semi-premium forward in terms of Isak, which I could possibly say, which if it wasn't for Haaland, Isak's a premium forward because he's the third most expensive. So
yeah.
he's just half the price of Haaland.
Yeah, I'd say my team looks quite similar to this one,
Right.
but with one stark difference, which I'm sure you can guess.
Yours courtesy of live FPL put together.
Yeah. So Ireland. Long story short, this was a draft with keeping Haaland in and getting all the premiums. If I was on a wildcard now, I'd want to reduce stress. So I wouldn't want to be in a position where, so this is me personally, there are loads of people that would happily remove Haaland from that team and just have all of the money spent elsewhere and go from a Konza to a Gabriel and get a Canate in and maybe, do you know what I mean, do a Haaland to a Isak and spend the money. But I think that I wouldn't, at the moment in my own team, and this is kind of where this wild card stemmed from, I don't know whether I'm going to move for Palmer or I'm going to move for Saka, or which order I'm going to get them in of, because I'm going to try and get both. So if I was on a wild card, I'd just remove that headache and get both and all of them, because the last thing you want every week is going, oh, should I have gone for Saka, and Saka does well and Palmer doesn't, and then the following week it's the same one, because that's nice and safe there. All four of them are going to have massive ownership, regardless. So all four of them can destroy your rank. So if I was on a wild card, but based on the fact that there are very good budget options with good fixtures, although which didn't appear very high up on Matey's table, I would happily spend the money on the 4 premiums and have good budget options elsewhere with good fixtures. For example, if you look underneath Strand Larsen's fixtures, I know that we said don't take the greens into account and everything, but they're perfectly good fixtures for a player that's in your team. Same with João Pedro. Same with Rodgers, in my opinion. Same with Konza. Do you know what I mean? If you look at that on that screen, based on the fixture ticker, ignoring the bench, the 2 players with the worst fixtures are Salah and Haaland. So I went for Verbruggen in goal. I think based on the fixtures, I think he's the best option. I think Sanchez is close. It's close. But this is dead on money, I think. I think it's pretty much bang on 100 million. So with my team value, which I believe is, can't remember what it was. I put it up the other day, didn't I?
I think it might have been 103 around that.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, my actual team value is 103.7, I think, around that. So I would have a bit more money to spend in the defence if I was to spend it anywhere. But I like Colwill. I think he's nailed. I know he's been pulled out of thing and in his yellow flag, but I like Colwill. I like Konza. I just put Konza in there because he's the most nailed Aston Villa defender. That if you had a bit of money, which I do in my current team, that would be a Digne. Timber again was a really good budget way of getting into Arsenal defence, but with my team value, that could easily be a Gabriel. I put that O'Shea on the bench from Ipswich because he's a 4 million defender, and again their fixtures are quite nice. But so if I had to play O'Shea against Palace, I'd happily put him in there. I wouldn't expect much, but I would. Aït-Nouri's on the bench in this wildcard draft because, as far as I'm concerned, he has the hardest fixture from a defensive standpoint, but he could easily start. Obviously, Fabianski's going to be in every single wild draft. I expect his price to increase over the coming weeks. And then the only headache you have each week, the more premiums you get in, is captaincy. Every week. And it's going to be a conundrum, and you're going to get it wrong, and everybody needs to come to terms with the fact that they're going to get it wrong. There are going to be weeks where you're between Saka and Salah, or you're between Salah and Palmer, or you're between Palmer and Saka, or in my case, when Haaland has Crystal Palace, Salah has Everton. Do you know what I mean? So that's a decision to be made. And so I'm trying to reduce headaches. I think you need to reduce headaches with a wild card, and forever wondering which premium you should get and worrying about what the other one's going to do. You should just get all of them. And same with benchings. That I know you had quite a strong defence in your last squad, but what I took from that was trying to figure out who to bench out of Aït-Nouri. Who are the other two defenders you were talking about? I can't remember who they were. All of a sudden,
on my wildcard draft.
Yeah, you said that you would play you play Gabriel and you play Canate every week, and then you would bench one of Colwill, Aït-Nouri, and Lewis Hall, is what you said.
Yeah, it would be playing one of those three, but
that's a headache waiting to happen.
Yeah, it would.
Do you know what I mean? So if that was my team, I would choose one and dud it to an O'Shea or a Greaves. I'm not sure he's fit at the moment, but that would be the first thing I'd do, because that's going to be a nightmare trying to start one of three every week, and especially with the good fixtures they've got coming up. And I'd do the same for the midfield. I've put Tyler Diblin here, but that could easily be, with my team value, a Smith Rowe, and I could continue the headache of Rodgers versus Smith Rowe every week. But I quite like Rodgers. I quite like his fixtures. Or I could have obviously taken the money out of Haaland, kept Mbeumo, and had a benching headache every week of trying to figure out whether to bench Rodgers, whether to bench Strand Larsen, whether to bench João Pedro, whether to bench Mbeumo, because you're not going to bench Isak/Watkins, you're not going to bench Palmer, you're not going to bench Sally, you're not going to bench Saka. So do you see what I'm getting at? I just think if you take, obviously everybody wants a nice solid squad of good solid players that are going to start every week, but other than Timber and obviously João Pedro when he's fully fit, there aren't any minutes risks in there other than Dibbling, but he's just a dud anyway. But I fully expect Konza, Colwill, Saka, Salah, Palmer, Rodgers, Strand Larsen and Haaland and Verbruggen to start sort of 9.5 games out of 10.
Yeah.
And so I think it's all about, with the amount of good value options that there are at the moment, again, paying homage to that bloke's table, especially at the back, and also in midfield with the likes of Rodgers, and also in the attack with the likes of João Pedro, Cunha, Strand Larsen, those sorts of players, you can afford to have the 4 premiums. You will just have to go without a Gabriel, but you can get to Timber. You will have to go without Liverpool defence. But fixture-wise, is the Villa fixtures defensively over the coming weeks on a similar level to Liverpool's? I'd argue that they are. So, yeah, all of the issues I'm currently having in my team, I would solve by having all 4 premiums. And then all you have to do every week is decide. There's no benching headaches. Like, for example, looking at that, next week you'd play 8 Nuri over Konza. And then and then all you've got to decide is captaincy. Obviously, this week it's Salah against Southampton. That's the easiest one. But the following week it could be Saka. Then the week after that it could be Palmer. Then the week after that you've got a headache between Salah and Haaland. Again, pretty simple. And then the following week is the big one where you could literally have Saka, Salah, or Palmer, or even Haaland against United. So that week's obviously one big one, but over the coming weeks, the captaincy takes care of itself. But I like that team. I do like that team. And so much emphasis. I was thinking when you showed me the points, your points on your team, both Palmer and Saka blanked this week. And they were essential last week. And I know they played each other. I get that. But what I'm trying to say is it's funny how the narrative shifts and how at the moment everybody's coming off Arsenal defence, and I'm thinking about it, and everybody's coming off Haaland because their team has been hit with some injuries, same as Arsenal's. If you look at the title race as a whole between the 3 teams, the team that's winning is the team that's pretty much played the same 11, bar an injury to obviously Jota, but with a very good replacement in Darwin Núñez.
Yeah.
They pretty much had a full strength 11, and obviously Alisson. I get that. But again, Kelleher, to be fair, would walk into most teams in the Premier League. So I think that like Arsenal missed Odegaard, they lost Saliba, Ben White's been injured, Timber's been injured. Do you know what I mean? So they've had some real issues at the back. Same with missing Odegaard, they've missed Rice at times. And City are obviously without Rodri, De Bruyne. They've been without Ake. They've been without Walker. So now you're starting to see those teams that have had injury issues, like an Arsenal and like a Manchester City, start to get back to full strength again. All of a sudden, Saka for me looks like a much better option than he did a couple of weeks ago, because I was thinking, well, Havertz is unlikely to score, so he's not going to get many assists. And also, apart from having Andy Robertson on toast, he hasn't really looked that threatening in the last few games. And that's the same with Haaland. Haaland's been playing in a team that have been, obviously, from a creative standpoint and getting the ball going forward, quite a second string Manchester City team. And also, the thing that Manchester City do so well, and that Arsenal also do so well, is they rotate really well in their European games. And we haven't had any Pep Roulette over the last 3 or 4 weeks because he hasn't got the players to choose from. So when that does start to happen, and when that does, they're all quite tired because they're all having to play Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, or Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday. So I think you've got to take all of that into account. I know I'm going on a bit of a Haaland rant here again, but I do think Arsenal assets, I do think City assets, I do think Liverpool assets, and I do think Chelsea assets are just must-haves. And then you can get really good value from a Villa and from a Brighton. So, and also Wolves, although are quite a poor team looking at the Premier League table, fixture-wise, I think are really good. If you look at the team, I've got 2 Arsenal, a Liverpool, a City, 2 Chelsea, 2 Brighton, 2 Wolves, and 2 Villa. And those are all quite high up in that fixture ticker that we saw earlier.
Yeah.
Again, the only thing, if you were to remove Haaland and go to a Watkins or an Isak, then you could even go, if you had really good team value, you could go Watkins and Isak, which I would like the look of. I'd like both of them. if I could have both of them.
Well, spoiler alert, which we'll go into next episode about our plans for our own teams in game week 12, as we both used our wildcard, is what I've been thinking out and planning about, and I'm open-minded to selling Haaland with doing the switcheroo, is out of a front three, instead of having, say, 3 sub 7 million forwards, not necessarily. So I mentioned earlier about having Watkins, Isak, Solanke,
Yeah, as
Jack,
part of your plans going forward, Jackson. Yeah,
about whether to actually have 2 of those 4. In which case, with fixtures wise, it would be Isak and Jackson at the moment.
if I did Haaland down to Jackson with good team value in this wild card, you could afford João Pedro and Strand Larson up to Isak and Watkins. I think I'm sort of clutching at the numbers there, but I think if you were to do that, obviously with good team value, with another couple of million in there, which I'm pretty sure I do have in my team, you could easily have a front three of Jackson, Watkins, and Isak. And that if you had a midfield 4 of Rodgers, Palmer, Salah, Saka, Watkins, Isak, and Jackson, well, I wouldn't turn my nose up at that. That would be my no Haaland draft in this.
Yeah, we might have to do then is when we focus on our own teams is in the next episode whether we can actually come up with a draft that contains those 7. So Jackson, Watkins, Isak, Saka, Salah, Palmer, and another Mbeumo maybe. But the question mark really is what the defence would look like with that.
Interesting, neither of us had Mbeumo in our wildcard drafts, though.
Well, I think that's probably... I'm wondering whether that's because... 2 main reasons. One, because of how well Fernandes did at the weekend. That was why I sort of tried putting him in there, because I've got Mbeumo in my own team. And it was also weighing up the, well, Brentford have got maybe 3 more decent fixtures. And so would it be have Wissa or Mbeumo? And I'd be tempted now, if I had a wild card, have one of the 2. And would it be better from a budget perspective to have Wissa over Mbeumo, so then you could get that Mbeumo slot up to the Fernandes? That's why I tried it with the wild card.
Speaking on Fernandes, I think again Manchester United having a new manager and again being widely sort of tipped to go into a 3. My worry would be how he fits into that system. Now, I'm not suggesting he's going to be dropped by any stretch, and I'm pretty sure I heard that Ruben Amorim likes to play with 2 number 10s. But Dallo and Matsraoui going from left and right back to left wing back and right wing back, you would say is a positive move for them from an FPL option. Likely to get further forward, likely to get balls in the box, likely to get around the box, take some shots, do that sort of thing. Don't necessarily need to be so aware of going backwards, because there's a back 3 with obviously probably a holding midfielder in front to turn it into a back 4, that sort of thing. For a Bruno Fernandes who's played in a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, changing to a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 could have a real impact on his game, and I'm not sure how it might make it better. Do you know what I mean? He might be a real standout option in a few weeks' time if he continues the form from last weekend. But he could also be asked to play a bit more of a deeper role, or he could be asked to be playing a bit more of like a Szoboszlai role for Liverpool, Or do you see what I mean? Or he might be given
Yeah.
a bit more free rein to go forward. But those variables that I don't know at the moment are for me making him not an option. However, if somebody said to me they were going to bring Bruno Fernandes in this week, I wouldn't think it was a bad move. For me personally, just with my team and the way I like to play, is that when the new manager comes in, I just like to see it. I just
Yeah.
like to see how he's going to set up, see if Fernandes, especially when there's a change of system, see what impact that has on his game, see if he's going to be a bit more of like whether he's going to be a bit of a box to box, whether he's going to sit a bit deeper and try and dictate play from a bit of a deeper role, or whether there's obviously a chance that he's actually at the top. He's actually part of a 3-5-2 and he's actually one of the two, almost playing up as a striker, or whether he's going to be a 3-4-3 and he's going to play a tip of a diamond, just something like that. Do you see what I mean? I just like to see how he's going to play before I bring him in. But as you say there, the pros of this wild card are obviously keeping Haaland with a premium midfield of Palmer, Saka, Salah and Haaland, and the cons are no premium defenders. Now, I would say Timber's a premium defender, but I know what you're saying. The norm of a Gabriel or a Trent or a Canate or
a 6
million
plus
option. Yeah. But the next episode, I think if we do a sort of a no Haaland draft, or we do a sort of a 2 premium or a 3 premium, or this is obviously a 4 premium, or we do like a big at the back sort of draft, I think that would be quite interesting for people. But again, I just think a balanced squad of premiums versus good budget options is just the way forward in every position. So I've got a premium defender in Timber, premium striker in Haaland, a ton of premiums in midfield, and just good budget options around him.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, people put in the comments or send any messages about if you want us to do wildcard drafts focusing on big at the back, or
any of your decisions that you're struggling with, or anything that you'd like us to talk about during this really dull international break, just let us know and we will happily bore you to death talking about it. Or I certainly will.
Keeping it both. Right. Well, take it easy. I shall speak to you soon.
Yes, mate. Have fun. Enjoy the week off. Please like and subscribe, everybody.
Very much.
Appreciate you watching as well. If you want to share it with your friends and see if it's something they'd be interested in, anything to help grow the channel. Just quite enjoy waffling about fantasy every week. If you do think people might benefit, do send it over to them and try and grow our audience. But thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you very much. And whereas I normally say keep your FPL affairs under wraps until the deadline, there isn't really a deadline for another week, and we're going to do another recording until then, so it's not really quite applicable.
Try and switch off from FPL, apart from watching our really long and intense conversations about it.
Definitely. It being international break, I'll try it off the cuff, spur of the moment, off the top of the headline of, as it's the international break, keep your FPL affairs and wildcard drafts wide open. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.